Hello trainers, Professor Palm here. Even though I'm a Pokemon professor, like all of you, I too am a Pokemon trainer, and I'll never forget where my journey began. I'm sure that all of you have your stories of where your journey began. Whether you started in Generation 1, or you just started recently in Gen 9, or maybe Pokémon Legends ZA will be the first game you play, all of us have one thing in common. Whenever we go on an adventure, we always start choosing a starter to be our first partner, and we go on an adventure like no other. It really is a journey of a lifetime. It's hard to believe that next year in 2026, there are some out there that are celebrating 30 years since they went on that journey in the Kanto region, from Palatown, collecting all 8 badges to become the champion. Wow, 30 years of Pokemon is on the horizon. For me though, my journey has actually been 20 years. As of this year, I officially became a trainer on my birthday in the year 2005. Many of you know that I began in the Hoenn region in Generation 3. However, I may have never told you the real story of what happened. On my birthday, while I had a Game Boy, my cousin gave me a present that changed my life forever. I got a little present that I opened that turned out to be Pokémon Emerald. That's right. My cousin gave me the game that changed my life forever, and it's also because of him that I became a Pokemon trainer. I knew what Pokemon was before, but when I put this game in and started it up, little did I know that my life would change forever on that birthday of mine. Usually in life, we meet someone and they change our life forever. For me, it was my cousin, who we'll call Mitt, that changed my life forever. Sometimes the smallest gestures of kindness can lead to big impacts. Not only did I become a Pokemon trainer because of him, I also became a Pokemon professor because I knew so much about them. And also, I really have to hand it to Mitt as well. Because of him, I also became a YouTuber. He was the one who usually told me that I know so much and I should share my knowledge with so many other trainers. So, I guess you could say it's because of my cousin that I'm also a YouTuber. But everything all began with this game that changed my life forever. No matter what generation you started in, the day you popped that cartridge into your system and you went to choose a starter Pokemon was the day that changed your life forever, as it was the day you officially became a trainer. Emerald was the game for me that changed my life forever. This is going to be a way I look back on Emerald 20 years later. I think it's still a great game after playing it after a long time. Though I'm not going to recap my full adventure, while I do remember it like so many others remember their first adventure, I'd be here for a very long time if I talked all about everything that happened. So I'll make it quick and brief, giving a bit of a recap of how Emerald went for me. So this is Pokemon Emerald the way I remember it. When I first got my Pokemon Emerald cartridge, I stared at it for a while before I put it in. I knew everything about Pokemon that I had to know at the beginning. I knew about where it all started in Kanto with the original 151, as Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green had been out for at least a year, and many people I know had played it. I also was familiar with the Johto region. While I hadn't played that game, I do remember seeing a lot of them in the anime, and I even watched a few others play their games. But Emerald was a whole new game for me, especially the Hoenn region. After all, this game introduced a whole new bunch of Pokemon for us to get. And in all honesty, I didn't recognize any of their faces. I thought that this was going to be very different for me because, unlike the other 2 regions where you at least knew some of them, you went into this region completely blind with a bunch of brand new Pokemon to catch as well as train to be the very best. So, I started up my Pokemon Emerald, and this is how I remember it. That's still just as cool as I remember. Even as time's gone on, I still get hyped whenever I see Rayquaza light up and that intro. It really did hype me up to see what kind of adventure I'd go on. So from there, I started my journey as I jumped out of the moving van that came to Little Root Town. And then I went over to meet the professor at his place, as my mother had told me, but he wasn't home. So instead, I made friends with his daughter May, and then came a moment that changed my life forever. Professor Birch was calling for help as he was being chased by a wild Zigzagoon on Route 101. I had to release a Pokemon to save him, and on that fateful day, I chose my first ever starter Pokemon, Torchic. After taking out Zigzagoon and saving Professor Birch, I was allowed to keep my Torchic, and then I had my first ever official trainer battle on Route 103 with May. After that battle with May, Professor Birch gave me a Pokedex, and May handed me Pokeballs to catch Pokemon, and I sure caught a lot. I said goodbye to my mom, and I went off battling many trainers, and then I hit Petalburg City, where I reconnected with my father, and I made a friend with a boy named Wally, who I helped catch a Pokemon, being his Ralts. My father then told me to take on the gym challenge as he wanted me stronger, and one day we'd battle, as he himself was a gym leader. So I made my way to the first gym, but met a pirate in the woods, who turned out to be a Team Aqua grunt, and I learned early on there's some pretty evil people in the world of Pokemon. Then I went on taking many gym leaders, like Roxanne, the Rustboro City gym leader, Brawley, the Dewford Town gym leader, and Watson, the Mallville City gym leader. I even made some friends along the way, like Mr. Briny, after I saved his Wingo Pico as it was taken from Team Aqua, and he took me to Dewford Town as well as Slateport City on his boat. Oh, and I also made a friend with Steven Stone, who I believed was the champion of the Hoenn region, and was also an amazing archaeologist. As your journey goes on, you learn more about Team Aqua, and even meet their leader Archie, who's invading the Oceanic Museum as he's trying to steal the Devon parts which you give to your new friend Captain Stern. However, Team Aqua is the least of your worries, as another evil team, Team Magma, is also to watch out for, as their leader Maxie is trying to blow up Mount Chimney to awaken a power of what he calls the super ancient Earth Pokemon. However, you foil his plans and take the meteorite, shutting it down once and for all. But this is only the end of Act 1. The second act begins off of Mount Chimney when you go to Lavaridge Town, and when you take on the fourth gym leader, Flannery, for your next gym badge. Now with 4 badges under your belt, it's time you return to Petalburg City Gym for one of the biggest fights of your journey. It's you against your father in a gym battle. If you beat him, he congratulates you. But after this battle, it does start to dawn on you of how far you've come, as you're now stronger than your own father. Now, as a bonus, Wally's father gives you the HM Surf for helping him. And now with Surf, it's time to explore the other side of the Hoenn region. On your way to the next gym, you're stopped at the Hoenn Weather Institute, where you meet Team Aqua admin Shelly, who's trying to find the seafloor cavern. After taking her on, as well as taking on the 4-Tree City gym leader Winona, you go to Mount Pyre, where, on the summit, you find out that Maxie and Archie have both stolen the red and blue orbs. You follow Team Magma to the Jagged Pass and unlock their hidden base, where you watch Maxie awaken Groudon with the blue orb, only for it to flee. If you go back to Lilycove City, a Team Aqua grunt will alert you that both Archie and Team Aqua admin Matt are both stealing the submarine at Slateport City, which they do from Captain Stern. If you make it back to the Lilycove City, all they do is add a drill and still get away. After chasing them, it leads you to Moss Deep City, where you take on gym leaders Tate and Liza, and this ends the second act with you winning their badge. The final act begins what I call Crisis Before Final Badge, where Team Magma takes over Moss Deep Space Center to launch a rocket into a volcano to call Groudon back. This leads you and Steven Stone to teaming up in a tag battle against Boss Maxie and Team Magma admin Tabitha to prevent their launch. Then, with an alert of seeing a sub go by, you chase Team Aqua to the seafloor cavern, where Archie revives Kyogre, only for it to flee and cause a massive storm. Steven alerts both bosses that they've created a crisis that could destroy the entire world. So, you go to Sootopolis City and watch as Groudon and Kyogre fight with the power of sun and rain, completely out of control. Steven sends you within the Cave of Origin to find Wallace, who goes with you to Sky Pillar, where you summon Rayquaza to the fight. As Groudon and Kyogre's fight ensues, Rayquaza flies from Sky Pillar and descends from the heavens to end the awful battle with both members of the Super Ancient Weather Trio. It uses a powerful scream to send Groudon and Kyogre into the water. When they're both gone, Rayquaza flies away with the crisis averted. Both Maxie and Archie reflect on their actions, and you go in to win your final badge against the new Sutopolis City gym leader, Juan. Now it's time for the final test. You enter the Elite Four and take on Sydney, the Dark-type expert, Phoebe, the Ghost-type expert, Glacia, the Ice-type expert, and Drake, the Dragon-type expert. Now it's time to take on the champion. It's Steven! Nah, JK, it's Wallace. And here he comes, giving you a final battle to prove who really is the best in Hoenn. After winning your champion battle against Wallace, your rival walks in to give you advice, only to realize it's over. Professor Birch then walks in congratulating you for everything you've done. Then Wallace takes you to the Hall of Fame, ending the game on a high note. While there is still more things to do in post-game with Battle Frontier and the Frontier Brains, I think that it's better to look at the normal game before we get to the post-game, because you've come on a very long journey through your Hoenn adventure. Both Ruby and Sapphire were great entries in the Pokemon series. However, I think Emerald was the definitive Gen 3 Hoenn game, as it fixed all the small problems with both Ruby and Sapphire. And honestly, I think it was the best game to end the Game Boy era of Pokemon with. So, let's look back on what made Emerald so good and the welcomed additions it had. I always found both Team Magma and Team Aqua rather interesting, as it was two evil teams instead of one. But what was also really cool was, depending on what original Gen 3 game you had, would also determine who would be your enemy and who would act on your side as an ally, despite being an evil team. I'm glad that Emerald managed to find the perfect balance to have both evil teams' plans work hand in hand. And they even added a few new things to their plans in the mix, like Team Magma's hideout being on Mount Chimney, which I find fits a little bit more into the Magma aesthetic, and also makes more sense that Groudon would be there, instead of being on the seafloor cavern where Kyogre is. I think that really worked well for both of the two members of the legendary Weather Trio. As a fossil fanatic, the Mirage Tower was a really cool thing. I also felt it was very rewarding to finally climb to the top and claim yourself a fossil for a prize. I also like that even after the Mirage Tower crumbled to the earth after receiving a fossil and the other one fell into the sand, it didn't get lost forever, as after becoming champion, you could go into the desert underpass and find the other one. What made Emerald a major standout of so many other Pokemon games was it was actually one of the first Pokemon Core Series games to have cutscenes, which became much more normal in later Pokemon games as the graphics improved to a point where they now look like we're watching mini Pokemon movies. This was the first time I actually felt how strong and powerful our legendary trio was, with both Groudon and Kyogre having that legendary battle that really felt like it could destroy the world. And of course, when Rayquaza came in to save the day, it really did feel like it was the only Pokemon that could stop them and end this terrible war. You can't talk about an adventure in Emerald without mentioning the post-game Battle Frontier. That place was so epic to go to. It's awesome to learn new skills in that place and take on the Frontier Brains, which are just like new versions of gym leaders, but with a twist, and that you need to learn new skills in order to win. Getting the silver symbols you earn when you beat them felt great, but going back to get the gold symbols in your successful rematches felt awesome. For me personally, one of the most special moments in Emerald happened with Steven Stone. I'll never forget my favorite battle is when Steven and you team up at the Moss Deep City Space Center and take on Maxie and Tabitha in a tag battle. Not only was this cool, as this was the first in-game tag battle, but it was epic that you got to team up with a former champion. I guess Game Freak themselves really liked the addition of this, because we've had this many times throughout many different gens, where you team up with others, sometimes your rival or sometimes another, and go for a tag battle against the bad guys. They even brought this back for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire 10 years later. I wish they could have done this twice in Emerald, as a battle with May or Brendan as your tag partner against an admin and Grunt would have been really epic. I guess Game Freak realized this too, as in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Mayor Brendan, depending on who you chose as your rival, would also team up with you in that fight for Meteor Falls. But the most welcomed addition for me was the Super Boss battle with Steven Stone at Meteor Falls. This felt very similar to the Super Boss battle with Red on top of Mount Silver in the Johto games. As awesome as it was to face your father in a gym battle, I think it paled in comparison when you have a battle between champions, where Steven, the former champion of Hoenn, faces the new champion of Hoenn, which is you. Just like that battle with Red, Steven doesn't hold anything back, and his team is extremely high leveled, as if his champion team has been really pushed to the max. If you manage to beat him, this will always go down in history as a battle you'll never forget. Well, Emerald is a great game, and I've talked on the great things that it's done, as well as improved on from the other Gen 3 games. No game will ever be perfect, as I do have a few problems with Emerald, as there are some things I wish it could have done better. The battle tents were cool ideas, as they got you ready for when you eventually would go to Battle Frontier, with Slayport's battle tent being a mini version of the Battle Factory, Verdanturf Town's battle tent being a mini version of the Battle Palace, which uses the Pokemon's nature to determine how the battle will go, and of course, Falarbor Town's battle tent, which resembles a mini version of the Battle Arena, with its battle style judgment determining who wins and who loses. While these battle tents were really cool, their prizes were so lackluster, as winning 3 battles in a row at Slateport City's battle tent only got you a full heal. Winning 3 battles in a row at Verdanturf Town's battle tent only earned you a nest ball, and winning 3 battles in a row at Falarbor Town only won you a single hyper potion. I wish they could have given you something special, like maybe a Pokemon you can't get in any Hoenn game for winning. I think that would have been a really cool prize, as you never forgot your victory from there, instead of one of those random items that you'll forget eventually that you got for a victory. Imagine getting something like a basic stage pseudo-legendary Pokemon as a prize for winning them, or even getting one of those extra Safari Zone area Pokemon as a prize that you could have taken on your journey. While the battle between the Super Ancient Weather Trio was epic to watch, I wish we got to know more about the lore surrounding Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza as the Super Ancient Weather Trio. After all, Pokemon Crystal gave us more lore about the legendary beasts as well as the legends in their 3rd version. And they even did this again a generation later in Platinum, where we got to learn not only more about Dialga and Palkia, but even about Giratina, and of course, where it resides in the Distortion world and why it's there. Well, thankfully, a decade later, we did get to learn more about Groudon and its power of the Sun and Earth in Omega Ruby, as well as Kyogre and its power of the rain and storms in Alpha Sapphire. And then we even got to learn more about Rayquaza's lore in the Delta episode and how it got to go Mega. I still feel that this was a missed opportunity to expand the lore about the Weather Trio, instead of us having to wait 10 years later, as it really would have been cool in Emerald to learn more. And my only final complaint about Emerald was that there was no day-to-night transition. I know that this didn't happen in any other Hoenn game, but considering how far they went with the Emerald version, I think this would have been really cool to end the Game Boy era with the day-to-night thing, and it also would have been the first of its kind. Granted, yes, that the Hoenn region did not introduce any Pokemon that evolved during the day to night, it still does come off a little odd that you set a clock at the beginning of the game. It does help with one thing later on down the line, but that's about it. I really would have loved to have seen the Hoenn region at night. But considering the fact that there are no Pokemon that evolve during the night introduced in the Hoenn region and we only got pre-evolutions, I'm 100% willing to overlook that and let it slide. And hey, at least 10 years later, in the remakes of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we did finally get to see the Hoenn region at night, and it was beautiful. All in all, Emerald was not only a great game, but it really knew how to end an era with a bang, as it did everything it could to bring new Pokemon fans as well as old ones together. Being the first game I ever played, it really took me on an adventure of a lifetime. And when coming back to it 20 years later from my first adventure that made me a trainer, I unlocked so many memories playing it again. While I've played many other great Pokemon games over the years, there's just some special charm of playing Emerald on the Game Boy that's always held it so high for me. Why is that? Well, I can't answer that. And with so many other games I played, even ones that are some of the best, Emerald still ranks very high. Even though it has its fair share of problems like all the games, sometimes I think Emerald balanced so many things so well that the very few problems stick out of it. Sometimes I wonder, is it possible that because the last core series game of each handheld era goes so hard, does it become the standard that we all wanted? Or is it so exceptional that it makes all the other games of the handheld era pale in comparison? When playing Emerald again, not just am I remembering being a kid and playing a game, I'm remembering being a kid in the 2000s, back in the day where so many others played the game in a whole different time, where internet was new and even a new place emerged called YouTube. Wow, looking back at playing Pokemon in the Game Boy era sure was a different time. Life sure has changed, the world has changed, and even we've changed as we've grown up. Even though childhood eventually does come to an end, not everything about it always has to go. It's good to still have some of those good old days and keep a part of them with you. Once in a while, you end up playing with something from it, like an old toy, or even a video game you loved. Or sometimes you even watch a clip of an old show you loved from those innocent days in another time. And it unlocks some precious core memories. Sometimes I wonder, do we hold childhood so dear because those times felt better? Or is it because they feel more familiar to us? Sometimes when you play a game you haven't in forever and start it for the first time in forever, you go back to an innocent time where you're a kid again with no worries and no fears. Back to the days when your imagination takes over, pretending you're at the park again with tennis balls or even baseballs, and when you and your friends throw them in the air, they turn into Pokeballs. While many others see you and your friends just standing around yelling at nothing, you see yourselves having a Pokemon battle of legends, with your favorite Pokemon standing before you, ready for a battle. Maybe as time's gone on, you've lost touch with those old friends, but when playing that old game once more, you think of them again, and maybe somewhere in the world, they're thinking about it too, and those old happy days, like as if they were in the car with you, they're in the living room, or even you're in your room again playing games. Or maybe they're no longer with us, but somewhere, when you're playing, they're watching you play, just like in those happy days. You never forget your first adventure in the world of Pokemon, with the friends and rivals you make, the challenges you overcome, the villains' plans you foil, and of course, the Pokemon that you meet and raise on your journey. Usually they start off small, but then become these powerhouses that you train to win every battle you have. That's what makes Pokemon so special. Every journey is different, and even if you catch the same Pokemon again, there will always be something a little bit different about the journey than last time, as no two are the same. If you're feeling nostalgic for the old days, I'd say bust out your old copy of the first Pokemon game you ever played and look back to where it all started, as well as with your team. After all, those 6 Pokemon in your party aren't just your champion team. They're a team that made the most important thing ever happen, your journey. And of course, these are also the 6 Pokemon who made the path for you that made you the trainer you are. It's never too late to become a Pokemon trainer. Everyone is welcomed into the world. And even as strangers, there's something about Pokemon that connects everyone in a very special way. Some of us can all share a love of a typing, love of a certain Pokemon, or even a love of a game. No matter what happens, all of us can remember something that really made an impact whenever we played Pokemon, whenever we played the card game, or even watched the anime. It's something that all of us can happily share. You know, sometimes people could even ask you, when did Pokemon start for you? I'm pretty sure that all of us will have much different answers. But if anyone ever asks you, is Pokemon a good series and do you remember your first adventure? You should smile and say, absolutely. Thanks for watching, trainers. I hope that looking back at Emerald all these years later also made you think back to your very first Pokemon game. I hope that maybe one day you also look back and maybe pass this on to others. But till then, Palm out.